The U.S. illegally were taken into custody during a federal raid at an illegal after-hours nightclub in Colorado Springs early Sunday. DEA Special Agent John Poulin says the club had been under investigation for several months for alleged activities including drug trafficking, prostitution, and crimes of violence. Among those detained were a dozen active-duty military members who were either patrons or working as armed security. Yemen's Houthi rebels says an alleged U.S. airstrike hit a prison holding African migrants and killed at least 68 people. The Houthi civil defense organization said 47 others were wounded. The U.S. military had no immediate comment on the strike in Yemen's Sada Governorate, a stronghold of the Houthis. The Vatican will be closing the Sistine Chapel to the public as it prepares for the conclave to elect the Catholic Church's next pope after the death of Pope Francis. A date has not been set for the conclave, but can only begin after a 9-day period of mourning. This is AP News. AP correspondent Donna Warder reports on the German sport of finger wrestling.
It was even popular in 1976 when the Associated Press visited what was West Germany back then. Finger wrestling, bloody, broken fingers and all. On Sunday, men in short leather pants and embroidered suspenders vied for the top prize at Germany's Finger Wrestling Championship. Around 180 competitors took part in the 64th German Championship. It's thought that finger wrestling originated as a way to settle disputes. Two competitors sit on opposite sides of a table, each hooking one finger, usually the middle finger, through a small leather loop. When the referee signals, each person tries to pull the other across the table. One participant said, "It's not dangerous at all." He says, of course, there will be open wounds and small injuries on the fingers from time to time. It looks worse than it really is. Just like old times.
I'm Marcela Sanchez, AP News.
This is 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, meteorologist Jay Marslick. For today, we're looking at lots of sunshine, high near 81 degrees, south winds gusting as high as 40 miles per hour. Into tonight, chance for showers and thunderstorms return through the overnight under cloudy skies at the low around 69 degrees. Temperatures rise to around 71 through the overnight with south-southwest winds at 20 to 25 and gusting as high as 45 miles per hour. Tuesday, chance for showers and thunderstorms early in the morning under partly sunny skies with a high near 74 degrees. And that's your latest Chicago weather update. Right now, it's 55 degrees.
While retinitis pigmentosa takes Mark's vision, his family gives him hope, whether at the family business or at home with his wife and sons. He knows he's not fighting alone. For 50 years, the Foundation Fighting Blindness has funded research into treatments and cures for blinding retinal diseases, providing hope to people with vision loss. And for Mark, winning the fight means being there for his family. The Foundation Fighting Blindness. Together, we're winning. Help us end blinding diseases at fightingblindness.org.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew. Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that focuses on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Good Monday morning, progressives, and welcome to the April 28th, 2025 edition of Choose Views, 773-763-9278. We'll be taking your calls this hour. Facebook Live, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. You can email me at richard@WCPT820.com and catch me on Substack. Catch all of our shows by subscribing, as always, to our WCPT podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. There you can get the short versions and the long version of Choose Views. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, driving it home with Patty Vasquez, the big picture with Edwin Eisendrath, Out Chicago, and our other shows. Check out our folks on the weekend. They do good work. Speaking of that, I had a chance to call into the family meeting yesterday. Eric and Michelle and Aunt Adrian were here in the studio. They got everything messed up in here. I'm going to blame Eric. I was just saying to Devin, everything was messed up. That's all Eric's fault. Anyhow, make sure you check out our weekend shows as well. Check out our heartlandsignal.com digital platform for all the great content that we have there for you to share with the folks that you care about. On today's show, our guests include Sarah Jones, as you guys know, from the daily PoliticusUSA will be with us. And Dr. Erie Crawford will be with us as well, talking about a tough subject, but one that we, as progressives, want to make sure we try to cover or at least address a little bit, and that's survivors of family members who've committed suicide. So we will, as licensed social workers, so we'll have some great conversation around that. Very tough topic. Other topics today, as my ongoing question right now, what do you want to see the national Democrats be focused on right now? What are the 2 or 3 items that are in your craw that you're like, come on, Dems, you got to focus on this? I think that's part of the pathway, or help to the pathway, of how we get on track with the common message that's for the largest number of people, and how we stay on track. It's important that we speak about that. And every person, every elected official that I've spoken with in the last 2 months for certain, through April and certainly in March, have said a similar thing, and that is, we want to hear from you. Call, make your voices heard. So this is why I'm going to continually ask this question. What do you want national Democrats to be focused on right now? Excuse me. We'll talk a little bit about judges being arrested, tariffs, income equality, wages, Bernie on Meet the Press. So we got a few things we'll be hitting you with this morning. And of course, some of our clips will help address or help us talk about some of the things that we want to address. Today, also, live, local, and progressive, Joan Esposito will be talking to Annie Carney and Luke Broadwater, authors of Madhouse, How Donald Trump, MAGA, Mean Girls, how Donald Trump, MAGA means Mean Girls. Okay. A former used car salesman of Florida, a Nepo baby, and a man with rats in his walls broke Congress. There you go. That's a long title to a book, but we got it in. Emily Chertoff, associate law professor at Georgetown University, and Elizabeth Todd Breland, author and professor of history at UIC. She's written a new biography of a labor leader, Karen Lewis, familiar name here in Chicago. Live, local, and progressive, weekdays 2 to 5 p.m. Central, WCPT, progressive talk for 20 years here in none other than Chicago. Tonight, on Driving It Home, Patty Vasquez will be joined by Dr. Jason Bussell of Chicago Community Acupuncture and mind and body expert Jen Zanotti, and John Parker, host of The Gailey Show, which will be making its WCPT debut tonight at 8 p.m. Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez, weekdays 5 to 7, Central, WCPT, the Heartland Signal website, TuneIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And on tomorrow's show, my guest will be Amy Scott, head of exhibitions at the Morton Arboretum, and Bryce Covert, contributing editor at none other than The Nation. Friday, Mayor Brandon Johnson will be here for this month with the mayor segment. Looking forward to talking with Mayor Johnson. So there you go, guys. We got some more updates that I'll be reading to you as the show goes on. But the biggie for this week is, of course, our May 3rd anniversary at Max and Benny's restaurant in Northbrook. Obviously, that event has been sold out for a bit now, but we hope you'll tune in this Saturday between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. to hear Hal Sparks, Patty Vasquez, Scott Duff, Joan Esposito, and myself broadcasting live with our special guest. The event is sponsored by Max and Benny's Restaurant, Fazio Insurance, Smart 365, the Democratic Party of Kane County, Southland Friends of Labor, Democratic Party of McHenry County, and McHenry County Democratic Women. Be sure to visit our anniversary page where you can find out details about the special broadcast and photo and sound galleries that document our 20-year history. The address is heartlandsignal.com/anniversary. So, you want to make your way there, and we'll talk a little bit about our voicemail line as well. So, that's getting us off to a start this Monday morning. Gosh, it's April 28th, Devin. I know we say it all the time, and I know that we say it all the time, but time does go by sometimes pretty quickly. That being said, let's bring you up to speed on a few Choose Views news items here on April 28th, 2025. Flights are about to get cheaper. Less expensive flights may be a bright spot for American travelers in an otherwise gloomy economic landscape, according to CNBC. The latest data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows airfares have dropped 5.3% in March compared to the previous year, 2024. The news comes as the demand for domestic travel, including government and corporate travel, takes a dive. But the boon for consumers is a concern for industry leaders who are adjusting forecasts for 2025 to address uncertainty. Ex-federal workers are struggling. State and local government jobs seemed like a safe bet for employees exiting the federal workforce. The reality hasn't been so simple. Months after losing their jobs, many applicants are still unemployed, according to the Wall Street Journal. And the problem could get worse. One estimate expects that there will be 200,000 fewer federal jobs by the end of 2025. Still, there's a bright spot with agencies in New York, Maryland, Washington, D.C. are leading the hiring charge. 200,000 less people in the workforce at any time is not good for any economy, because those dollars that were spent in those local economies, those local markets, that dries up, that affects businesses in those communities, which will then affect other jobs. Anyhow, kids crash a corporate earnings call. Pepsi CEO Ramon Laguarta appeared unfazed by a question about weight loss drugs during last week's earnings call. But he was surprised by the person who asked the question. That's because it came from the 13-year-old daughter of a Wall Street analyst who joined the call with her dad for Bring Your Child to Work Day. The company, Laguarta said, wasn't warned. Her 13-year-old brother, meanwhile, had a question of his own for Keurig, Dr. Pepper's chief executive. So they kind of, what's that when people, they question bomb the call, so the earnings call. There you go. How long is it taking to find a job? LinkedIn's latest workforce confidence survey shows that more than half of U.S. job seekers have been on the hunt for 6 months or longer. But workers in certain roles have been searching for just half that amount of time. Sales professionals looking for a job are most likely to say they have been searching for 3 months or less, followed by program managers and researchers. Meanwhile, 2/3 of active job searchers employed in marketing said they've been searching for over 6 months already. Credit card users are turning a little bit more strict, bracing for an economic downturn. Credit card companies, for sure, JP Morgan Chase and Citigroup, are stockpiling cash to cover future losses, with Synchrony, while Synchrony is bracing stricter lending standards. Yeah, U.S. Bancorp, for its part, is focusing on marketing to wealthier consumers. Though consumer spending remains strong overall, there are some signs that the credit card firms aren't overreacting. Delinquencies, unfortunately, have already risen to a pre-pandemic level, and several major banks saw less travel and entertainment spending in the first quarter. And last but not least, diners are defying the pressure to tip. Frustrated consumers are getting creative when it comes time to pay their restaurant bill, according to the Wall Street Journal. Faced with an onslaught of digital prompts to add a gratuity for even the smallest of services, and we've all seen this, diners have developed their own coping strategies. When service is subpar, for example, some tip less, some inspect every receipt for credit card surcharges and other fees, and some are opting to eat at home, avoiding the issue altogether. How about that, Devin? I know you probably have seen this. I know that we all have seen, if you go to a restaurant and the bill comes and there's a tip already built in, or your options are 20, 22, and 25%. What else have we seen? Well, this is the one that's become really interesting to me, where you go into a retail establishment and that's not necessarily serving food, but it's a retail establishment where you're buying something, and on the screen there's an option to leave a tip for buying socks. Anyhow, guys, it's 6:15. We're going to take this quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
Thanks to our loyal WCPT listeners, the WCPT 20th anniversary broadcast is officially sold out. But you can still enjoy the broadcast by listening to WCPT Radio on Saturday, May 3rd from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Hal Sparks will kick things off at 11 a.m., then hand it off to WCPT hosts Richard Chu, Joan Esposito, Patty Vasquez, and Scott Duff at 1 o'clock. Surprise guests from WCPT's 20-year history will also join us. Scroll through 20 years of WCPT Radio with legendary interviews, shows, and pictures on the WCPT 820 website. WCPT's live broadcast is sponsored by Max and Benny's Restaurant in Northbrook, Fazio Insurance, Smart 265, Kane County Dems, Southland Friends of Labor, Democratic Party of McHenry County, and McHenry County Democratic Women. It's the WCPT 20th anniversary live broadcast Saturday, May 3rd from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Only on WCPT 820, Chicago's only progressive talk radio station for 20 years.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Good morning. You're waking up with Richard Chu.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
We're live and ready to hear from you. Text or call us now at 773-763-9278. Same number. Simple as that. Let's get the conversation going on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, progressives, welcome back to the show, 773-763-9278. And yes, it's Monday morning, and this is Chu's Views. So, some updates, some things that have happened, some conversation pieces that I think are important. And it's a question I wanted to ask you guys last week, but I figured we'd get to it this week as well, because it's an ongoing one. Obviously, the question about what you guys want to see Democrats focused on right now. There's some big, broad issues. There's some more specific issues. But I'd like to hear what you have to say and kind of add to the conversation in that regard. You can text it to me, or you can just give us a call and we can talk it through. But here's a question that someone have for you guys, and that's this. Who are the only three presidents in the last 50 years to reduce the deficit? Let's see who knows the answer to that question. Don't have a prize for you other than you get to hear our wonderful voices when you call in. Devin's first, of course. But who were the only three presidents in the last 50 years to reduce the deficit? And let's see what you guys know about that. And who knows? Maybe we might do something special. We'll see what happens. All right. Donald Trump is certainly, well, I won't tip my hand in that regard. This is a recent survey that has come back that I think is really important to talk about right now. And why is it? Because it references something that we talked about a little bit last week, but bears additional conversation. And this is a poll from the Washington Post ABC news poll that sums it up pretty nicely. And this is actually something that's put together by our good friend that will be joining us at 7 o'clock. That's Sarah Jones and her partner, Jason Easley. And the question, the statement, the finding, the poll is this. Trump is now the most hated president after 100 days in U.S. history. Most hated president after 100 days in U.S. history. And I don't know how one recovers from being the most hated president after 100 days, no matter how long that president remains in office, because that's a tough hill to, or that's a tough spot to come down from. But here's some of the numbers. Trump's overall approval rating is lower than it was just 2 months ago. The poll shows that 39% of adult Americans approve of the way that Trump is handling his job. Only 39%, compared with 55% who disapprove, including 44% who disapprove strongly. Trump's approval rating is lower than any past president at the 100-day mark in their first or second terms. How about that? Not that we didn't know that there was a lot of dislike for the dude, but that we have to keep talking about it, and we have to keep making it part of the conversation, because we let this slip away. We've let the conversation about how awfully he has slipped away in the past, and that's in some ways why we got him again. All right, local national issue, what am I talking about? So last week, Senator Dick Durbin from Illinois decided that he's not going to run again, and Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky made that same decision, and she'll be making a more formal announcement next Monday at one of the events that's being held here in Chicago. So right out of the gate, as many had predicted and been anticipating, Lieutenant Governor here in Illinois, Juliana Stratton, great video, and I sent it to some of you that requested it, and I can send it to you, send it to others if you'd like, of her standing in black heels on top of a picture of Donald Trump. It's actually a pretty cool look, pretty cool video. But this is a decision that's going to impact, it's a local, the U.S. representative and U.S. senator making a decision to do something that is going to impact us on a national level. Well, one of the great things about this is that we've got people here in Illinois who are going to be great candidates for that seat, those seats, I should say. And one of them, of course, is Lieutenant Governor Stratton, who we hope to have on the show again soon. But here's what's really interesting, and people were waiting for it, and it happened fairly quickly, and that's Governor Pritzker, Governor J.B. Pritzker here in Illinois has endorsed his lieutenant governor as a fighter in the bid for the U.S. Senate seat that's going to be vacated by Dick Durbin. I think it's a big deal. And it's a big deal because it says that he has confidence in his administration. We know that she's going to be still lieutenant governor until we get to that point. But he has I think that it says a lot that he came out early, didn't wait 2, 3, 5 weeks to endorse her. He came out right early and said it, that he's endorsing her as his choice for Durbin's seat. I think the reason that's important, and listen, whether it ends up being Representative Krishnamurthy or Lauren Underwood or Robin Kelly, we got a great bench. And chronologically, they're all younger than Dick Durbin. They all will be, they will bring energy, I believe, if you've watched them in there. If you look at those three representatives, Krishnamurthy, Underwood, and Kelly, they've all been highly energized in the work that they do. They're all experienced. They've passed legislation here in the state of Illinois and on a federal level, and they're in touch with their communities. And that, to me, is exciting. So we have, and those with those three names plus Lieutenant Governor Stratton, we have a strong bench of people. Illinois has a strong bench of people on the state level, on the U.S. level, and I'm excited about that. That's why we try our best to have a lot of our local leaders of organizations as well as elected officials on this show, so that we can highlight what they're doing and the work that they're doing to keep us connected, keep the momentum strong and forward moving. And in this upcoming Senate race, U.S. Senate race, which will be an interesting one to watch, it's nice to see that our governor is confident enough in himself and his administration to get behind his lieutenant governor early in this announcement as his choice. And I think that people throughout the state of Illinois are going to be well represented by her if she were to become the nominee. But we would also be well represented by Representatives Krishnamurthy, Underwood, and Kelly. So I'm excited about them, and I'm proud of who we have on the bench. The same thing is true for Representative Schakowsky's seat. We have a strong number of people who are going to run for that seat, and I believe that whomever who gets that nomination is going to be a great representative for us. And I'm not even going to talk about the possibility of Republicans taking the seats, because they're not going to do a good job. They never really have in those roles. So we're not going to mess up this opportunity. We're going to make sure that they're replaced by good, strong, progressive thinking, leaning Democrats for the Senate seat and for the House seat. And we'll talk about this a lot because it's 2026 is a ways off, but we know election season will hit fairly quickly when we get into the fall. But we're going to continue to push whomever is running and make sure that they're going to be able to do the job, and that we are behind them. That's our responsibility, I believe, is to get behind whoever it is and help them get into the seat and do the job that they're elected to do. And a little bit of a shout out. I didn't follow the story real deeply, but it's one of the things I had in my notes. A little bit of a shout out to Cory Booker and to Minority Leader Jeffries for starting the sit-in that they started this weekend. And some may say, what the hell are they doing a sit-in for? And I get it. I also believe that part of the conversation right now is we've got to draw attention away from Republicans. And if a sit-in does that, then I'm okay with that. Again, we don't need things to be perfect. We need to be perfectly willing to work hard and do things that might be a little bit out of the box, or not something, or it might be viewed as a retread idea, i.e. a sit-in. But if it means that we've got people out there doing things that are elected officials, then more power to them. I just see it that way, because I'd rather them be active than them not be active, and coming out of their towers and getting out and mixing with the people. And that's what I see, and that's what I saw that the two of them were able to do. And I think Senator Coons joined them as well. So, this is what we talk about or part of what we talk about, part of what we mean, I should say, when we want our folks to be active, when we want them to be connecting with the community. And we want to see more of that, whether it's Bernie and AOC out and about doing their work, or whomever it might be across the board. That's part of this process, is staying connected to the voting community, getting people out. If a sit-in like that gets people who didn't vote to come out, then that's a victory, because that's where I keep saying is where the real gold is. It's not trying to flip Republicans or moderate Republicans or independents who, thought that they could miss the fury of what Trump's doing by voting for him again. It's not so much trying to make them change their minds. If they're willing to change their minds, then great. But like we said last week when we had Karen and Byrne in studio, they've got to repent first. They've got to do the work first and then take a back seat. But if it means that, the people who sat out the election for whatever crazy a reason that they did, that they come out to a sit-in and they get involved, then I can say that that's a win for us to get those people off the sidelines. It's just as someone who may not have gone to any rallies during this past election cycle, but decided to show up at an AOC Bernie rally. If that brought them out, and now they realize that staying on the sidelines was not a smart move, and now they're ready to get involved and roll up their sleeves and dig in, that's a win as well. I, again, will say I'm not looking for perfection from people who are getting in the mix. I'm not looking for perfection from our elected officials. I'm looking for perfectly involved people, meaning that they are willing to throw their hat in the ring, meaning voters, and get back in the game. And then those who are elected, that they're willing to take maybe some different approaches, something that they haven't done in the past, something we haven't seen them do, but they're in the game. They're showing leadership by doing some creative things, some different things in their outreach to us. So, all right, let's take a quick break, guys. Number, of course, is 773-763-9278. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back. We'll chat you up some more.
WCPT replay.
Do we have a helper with our governor, J.B. Pritzker? I'm so proud of him for getting up and saying something and for letting this administration know that, don't mess with Illinois.
Yeah.
He has been a huge ally to the LGBTQ community his entire life.
Yes.
His entire career. He married people in his backyard before it was legal.
Yeah, I remember when we had all three gubernatorial candidates on when he ran for the first time. Pritzker was the one I was least leaning towards, until he came in the studio and told his story about, as a child, being taken to Castro Street by his mother to watch the Pride Parade. Mm-hmm. And I listened to him and I said, man, you come by it honestly. It is in your DNA. I became a huge fan that day. We had him in, and I continue to be. Yeah. I think we're really lucky.
Keep listening to WCPT 820, because facts matter.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, meteorologist Jade Marslick. For today, we're looking at lots of sunshine, high near 81 degrees, south winds gusting as high as 40 miles per hour. Into tonight, chance for showers and thunderstorms return through the overnight under cloudy skies at the low around 69 degrees. Temperatures rise to around 71 through the overnight with south-southwest winds at 20 to 25 and gusting as high as 45 miles per hour. Tuesday, chance for showers and thunderstorms early in the morning under partly sunny skies with a high near 74 degrees. And that's your latest Chicago weather update. Right now, it's 56 degrees.
You're listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
It's Chew's View with Richard Chew on WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Hey, progressives, welcome back to the show. It looks like we have a couple people that have sent in their responses to who the three presidents have been in the last 50 years that have reduced the deficit. So we'll see who else has got some thoughts on that. And, we'll announce the names a little bit later in the show. As WCPT celebrates 20 years on the air, we want to hear from you, your WCPT story. Call 773-467-8202 today and leave a voicemail. We'll be playing some of the messages on the air as the days go by. That number again is 773-467-8202. A recording of Patty Vasquez will greet you with suggestions for recording your WCPT story. So make sure that you give us a call and leave that message. Okay, so let's see. In this conversation around Trump and tariffs, we've seen nothing but ongoing disaster. And people have referred to him as blinking, and he didn't hold the line in terms of talking about tariffs. Well, we knew that was going to happen, and we knew that there would be there would be a push and pull, and then unfortunately in that push and pull, that American consumers would be impacted by it. Businesses are starting. Businesses have gone bankrupt. Many businesses have reduced staff, fired people, however you want to call it, whatever you want to call it. But ultimately, the blame game, or the blame for this as part of the blame game, rests squarely in Donald Trump's lap and in the laps of the GOP that won't do a darn thing about it. Okay, and blaming the thing that I've found kind of, once again, the GOP and much of the mainstream media and how they ask questions and who they have on their shows are blaming rather than saying, here's what we can do to fix it. And this is how it got to this point in the first place. But one of the countries that consistently gets blamed is China. Now, for years, we've had a struggle with not just China, but other countries when it comes to importing and exporting. But part of my history and part of what I remember is that Republicans were in federal offices when so many companies were given the green light that it was okay to change their import-export guidelines. And particularly when it comes to jobs, Republicans have been at the helm. That's why I asked the question about the deficit. Have been at been at the helm on a federal level when the largest number of companies decided to start, putting less money into research and less money into their development and of their companies. So research and development started to wane right after Reagan took office. That's a database fact. And cutting rather than supporting and building became the American way, like gangbusters for 8 years of Reagan and then 4 more years of Bush 1, which is why, one of the reasons why I should say, when Bill Clinton ran for office, that he was able to lean in hard on why the Republicans had just dumped on the American people a severe number of job losses or shifts or shipping overseas, and why Bill Clinton was able to lean in hard and say, that's not the way we go. And I know a lot of people want to blame NAFTA, if you will, squarely in the lap of Bill Clinton. But that's not accurate when you look at the time stamp of when that conversation started. Republican administrations have been at the helm when these things have taken place. So there's a clip that I came across that sort of highlights, don't blame America. Don't blame others. Maybe change the way in which you handled this conversation around tariffs. And Devin and I put together a clip about what America actually needs, and that's maybe a revolution.
You guys are all blaming China, you're blaming us, but it's really your own fault, and America now needs a revolution.
They will be blind, and you thank them for it. That's a tragedy. That's a scam. That's why I'm saying this right now. Americans, you don't need a tariff. You need a revolution. For decades, your government and oligarchs ship your job to China, not for diplomacy, not for peace, but to exploit cheap labors. And in the process, they hollowed out your middle class, crushed your working class, and told you to be proud while they sold your future for profit. And yes, China made money, but we used it to build roads, lift millions out of poverty, fund healthcare, raise living standard. We reinvested in our people. My family also benefited from it. What did your oligarchs do? They bought yachts, private jets, mansions with golf course driveways. They manipulate the market, dodge tax, and poured billions into endless wars. And you get stagnant wages, crippling healthcare costs, cheap dopamine, debt, and flagged wave poverty made in China while they pick your pocket. For 40 years, both China and the United States benefit from the trade, the manufacturing, but only one of us use that wealth to build. This isn't China's fault. This is yours. You let this happen. You let the oligarchs feed your lies while they made you fat, poor, and addicted. Now they blame China for mess they made. I don't think so. I don't think you need another tariff. You need to wake up. You need to take your country back. I think you need a revolution.
Oh, he has a point.
So, a little hard to hear everything that it was saying, but the base points of this is that the United States kind of fed this animal itself. And if you look at what's really happened, what this gentleman said about, how we've allowed the country to go down this path of letting big business and big financial interest sort of take over our economy, it bears itself out. And sometimes that's the hardest thing for anybody to do, certainly when you've got a country that has claimed itself as being the greatest in every facet. When you state that, but you don't do the things that reinforce that, there is a conversation to be had. And there might be people that would say to me, well, Chu, it sounds like you're leaning in the direction of China. No, I'm leaning in the direction of success. The United States, and I remember in my 20s, I said, where's the investment? Where's the reinvestment into employees? Where's the reinvestment in development and education and tools to allow people who at that point may have been 10, 15 years older than I was in the workplace to feel like, with all that was changing with technology and engineering and systems and all that, as we had been moving for years away from an industrial-centered economy, where was the reinvestment by businesses and, frankly, the federal government to make sure that our workforces on all levels were stronger? Well, what happened is there's a person that ran for office and got elected that had a devastating impact on this, and that was Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan took his success at destroying public education, and certainly on a collegiate level, and overlaid that on a federal level. Our educational system suffered in terms of public education greatly, more than any modern president, or in the last, I'm going to say 50 to 60 years, going back to JFK, frankly. Even Nixon knew it was stupid to destroy public education. And Reagan was at the tip of the spear of that. And the impact that it's had on our country has been devastating. Because look at what we have now. We have a highly uninformed. Yeah, we may have people who have access to all the social media channels and outlets and information overload. We know that. But how does that mean that we have an educated, informed, trained and retrained and redeveloped and strengthened society? And I would say no, it doesn't. And Reagan, in terms of modern day federal leadership voices, presidents, administrations, was the tip of the, he was the person that pushed those dominoes over. He did it in California because he hated, and he's been quoted, he's been caught on tape. There's writings by people that were part of his state administration in California and part of his federal administration. They wanted to destroy public education because an educated society meant that people really knew what was going on. And he overlaid that onto the federal system and how we looked at public education on a federal level to become part of the policy of the United States. And that has led to, going back to what this gentleman said, for 40 years, you know, China and the United States have been in a battle economically. But the one thing for sure that's happened is that you look at where so much of the brain trust has been in areas of technology, in areas of science, areas of math, and the list goes on. And we have dropped the ball. And we want to, I mean, I can put a little, this is one of those rare times that I'll say, quote unquote, both sides do it. But this is one of those times when the country has failed its citizenry when it comes to making sure our citizens are educated from the ground up, from kindergarten through and through. And if the country has failed in an area when it comes to adult education, I think that we tremendously failed people who in the 80s were in their mid to late 30s, early 40s, of making sure that they were re-educated, retooled, sharpened, given opportunities to grow their knowledge base. We failed that group of people in a major way. And let me tell you how that's impacted where we are today in my reading of this. That group of people who would be, you know, now in their mid to late 70s, some in their early 80s, that didn't have the opportunity to retool, re-educate, get stronger, are also the parents of a lot of the Gen X crowd that felt, based on the data that's out there, that they were not given the same opportunities, and that they saw the change in our industrial system impacting our middle class. And because we didn't sort of recharge the system and make sure that education, like China did, was at the top of the list, at the top of the heap of things that we were reinvesting in, and we took away and we made it expensive with, you know, and this leads to the this conversation around college debt. You know, Reagan made it clear that, you know, having grants wasn't necessary. We need to create a strong loan system to borrow for your education and then to be further into debt. We can go back and say, all right, that's where that started. Meanwhile, to the gentleman on that clip's point, the rich got richer and richer and richer and richer. Tax policy changed, and we didn't do a doggone thing about it, other than continue to blame other countries, namely China and other countries in Asia, for why we weren't succeeding. When in fact, if you go back again, you can timestamp this, guys. Reagan was that president that quote-unquote leader, that former actor that got people to believe that that was the way to go. Look at how he destroyed unions. Look at what he didn't do to the educational system, or did do to the educational system in California. And as I said, did that as an overland of federal level. And you ask the question how we got to where we are, you should be asking that question. And part of it starts right there. And every now and again, I touch on this because I hear conversations about, the Dems aren't doing this, the Dems aren't doing that. And many times I agree with that. But we do have to look at what the modern day GOP, and I say modern going back 40 years, has done to destroy some basic systems that our country had used post-World War II to strengthen our middle class. So a lot of what Bernie is saying resonates because it's based in the fact, and like this gentleman on the clip said, don't blame China, United States of America. Look at yourself. And that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes. All right, let's take a quick break, guys. The number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
If you turned 65 recently like me, it's important you find a Medicare Advantage plan that gives you the coverage you're looking for. But finding one can be difficult. The best thing I did, and I suggest you do the same, is call a licensed insurance agent and let them walk you through your Medicare Advantage plan options. There are so many benefits you have access to, so make the call now and let the representatives explain everything to you. Our licensed insurance agents can offer you a variety of Medicare Advantage plans. Plus, the call is free, the information is free, and there's no obligation to enroll. We're here to make it easy for you to select a Medicare Advantage plan that may work for your needs. Finding a Medicare Advantage plan can be easy if you do what I did. Make a quick call right now to learn more. Thank you.
800-365-6303. 800-365-6303. 800-365-6303. That's 800-365-6303.
Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
It's Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey guys, welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. Devin, let's grab a couple of quick calls. Let's go to Al in Franklin Park. Good morning, Al. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Richard. How you doing?
Good, my man.
You were talking earlier about what I think the Democrats need to do, and it all has to do with, our tools and paying attention to what's going on the internet. We have to improve our coordination and how to talk to people, have more focus groups. They're doing a lot on their side to get people to listen to their side. And one person, I listened to on the media that they did on NPR from April 18th. I recommended they went into the mega universe, and they were looking at many examples of what they're doing right now on the Charlie Kirk shows, on the podcasters and so on, to get a hold of people. And so that's where I am. We really got to be focusing on the tools and coordination on our side, because there's a lot of good people out there, and it's just that we're not always all kinds of groups working on this, but somehow I just don't see us coming together as well as the other side has.
Well, I think that the word that comes to mind, Al, and thanks for your contribution, the word that comes to mind is coordination and or coordinated effort. I would say that the strength of so many voices is that there are so many voices, and that people are participating, people are active. There's podcasts, there's all the different tools that are out there. The challenge is focusing that energy in a direction that's going to have the message be somewhat common, or I don't want to say the same message. I think if there is a same message or a similar message, it has to be one that speaks to taking back democracy and destroying Donald Trump, taking him down politically, and the Republican Party. That has to be part of everybody's message. It has to be part, if it's not, then we are susceptible to what you just said, which is not a cohesive direction. And there are going to be so many people in our camp, there already are, that have an opinion about what needs to be said. There's no question about that. And if there has been a comparison one way or the other, is that the Democratic Party's voices, as I said, it can be disparate and sometimes not as focused as they should be. A Republican message, craven as it may be, is oftentimes a message that everybody jumps on board with. And that's just I appreciate what you're saying. That is an honest assessment of sort of where we are right now.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. And can I make one suggestion about Saturday's show?
Sure.
Sorry. I just wanted to say that the history is all great, but I just want to be a positive attitude going forward. Get everybody riled up to what we can do in coming forward on WCPT. Sometimes on some of the callers, we know we go too dark, and courage is contagious, joy is contagious, but so is despair, and so on and so forth. And
that's
sorry on all of that.
No. That's a good point. I made note of it as you were saying it, and we want Saturday's show to be as inspirational as possible. So, Al, as always, I appreciate you just speaking your truth. That's greatly appreciated here. Okay?
Okay.
All
sure.
right.
Talk to you later, Richard.
Thanks, Al. Have a good day.
Bye.
That's a good point. We do want it to be forward thinking. And I know that, I try to make certain, certainly, that as much as we talk about things that might be tough and that are issues about where we have been and where we are, we do have to have a message that's about going forward. If there's anything, and this is what Vice President Harris, I tried desperately to do, and that's a message about going forward. And we still have to take that baton and go forward. So it's incumbent upon all of us. It's important for all of us to take a message forward. Because a lot of what the GOP and Trump and the administration want to do is keep dragging us backwards and keep having everything be about punishment and harm. I mean, Pam Bondi's out of her damn mind. If you challenge the president, if you call out his BS, that they're going to, find a way to, and she's out of her damn mind. She just is. Anyhow, I'm trying to stay positive. Sorry, guys. Oh, Devin, let's grab another call. Let's go to Cindy in Crown Point. Good morning, Cindy. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Richard. Back when Reagan was elected and was deregulating or attempting to deregulate education, I worked for one of the 5 parent information centers in Chicago to help parents with disabled children. And we had a coalition of organizations on disability rights, and we organized a huge protest in Grant Park because he was attempting to reverse the special education federal law. And some states were even repealing their state special education laws in anticipation of the federal government reversing on that. And the day we had our protest out east, they burned the regulations at theirs. We tore them up at ours, but we were able to fight that. And the Secretary of Education actually, under Reagan, had a child with disabilities. So we were successful, but now with Trump, it's like on steroids.
Yeah, and that's a concern. I mean, that's why I pointed that out. We have to, listen, education is so incredibly important to our, not just our political system, but I say to our economic system. The more educated community that we have, the stronger community that we have. And that ranges from anything and everything that we could talk about in terms of politics. We could be talking about how awful the Electoral College is and what we have to do to fix it. And I know there's people that we could talk about that. We could talk about Medicare. We could talk about Medicaid. We could talk about healthcare and more broadly. We can talk about the cost of goods. We can talk about safety. But the more we have an educated community, the more we have an opportunity to fix those things. And we've fallen down on the job there. And I can go in my lifetime back and draw a line and go, a lot of this started with Ronald Reagan. It just is. And that's what a lot of the people don't want to acknowledge that, Cindy, because they feel like if we say something bad about Reagan or St. Ronald, that, you know, it's an awful thing. But I feel we have to. So
one more thing, Richard. The Department of Justice is going after the 3 state-operated facilities for individuals with developmental disabilities in Illinois. I have a daughter that's at a center in Dixon, Illinois. It's been wonderful for her. She was kicked out of a group home. One of the parents that eventually got his child placed at Mabley, he even set up a group home. He did all the work to set one up, and then they kicked his son out of the group home. Because if you have a child that has certain behaviors that the state-operated facilities, and one parent, a family I met, they had a child with autism, and because the pay is so low in the community facilities, the staff was never stable, and their child lost 50 pounds. And once they got him into a state facility, he stabilized and did much better. There just are certain people that need that consistency, and I'm wondering if they want to break the union, because that's a strong union. They're part of the state union for state workers.
Yeah, and I think that comes back, at least I think, I could be wrong here, that comes back to more people being more informed is going to be part of our pathway forward. A lot of people are uninformed, unaware, and I don't want to go down the path of saying they don't care, but based on their actions, it seems as though they don't. But Cindy, I appreciate your call. We're going to hit this top of the hour break. Thank you as always for your contribution to the show.
Thank you, Richard.
Have a great day. We'll talk soon. Bye now. All right, Devin, let's go ahead and hit this top of the hour break. When we come back, guys, we're going to have with us our new good friend and colleague, Sarah Jones, who will be chatting with us about a number of things. The number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
This is a WCPT Veteran Minute. Captain Hugh Molzak's love for the sea started after he finished high school, as he served the British Sooners and in 1918 immigrated to the United States. Within 2 years of joining the Marines, Molzak earned his Shipping Master Certificate, the first African American to do so. In 1921, Molzak was promoted to the rank of captain. In 1942, the SS Booker T. Washington, the first ship to be named after an African American, was created, and Molzak was offered the position of captain, but he turned it down at first, as the Marines did not want to have an integrated crew. Molzak stood firm on his beliefs, stating, "Under no circumstances will I command a Jim Crow," and Molzak became the first African American captain of the first ever integrated crew. Under Captain Molzak, over 18,000 troops were sent to the European warfront, and ships carrying tanks, aircrafts, and ammunition to United States troops in World War II. This has been a WCPT Veteran Minute.
Steel, walk behind, zero turn, and stand-on mowers are built to get the job done. Shop online or at your local Steel dealer. Steel, let's go mow.
AP News, I'm Marcela Sanchez. More than 100 immigrants were taken into custody during a federal raid at an illegal after-hours nightclub in Colorado Springs early Sunday. DEA Special Agent John Pullen says the club had been under investigation for several months for alleged activities including drug trafficking, prostitution, and crimes of violence. He did not specify the countries the detained immigrants were from. Among those detained were a dozen active-duty military members who were either patrons or working as armed security. Murder charges have been filed against a man accused of ramming his black Audi SUV into a crowd in Vancouver. KG Adam Lowe faces 8 counts of second-degree murder. The British Columbia Prosecution Service says the 30-year-old could be facing more charges. Police say the suspect has a history of mental health issues. The incident took place on Saturday during Lapu Lapu Day, a Filipino heritage festival. 11 people were killed and dozens more injured. Yemen's Houthi rebels say an alleged U.S. airstrike hit a prison holding African migrants. The Houthi Civil Defense Organization said at least 68 people were killed and 47 wounded. The U.S. military had no immediate comment. African migrants for years have landed in Yemen trying to reach Saudi Arabia for work. The Houthi rebels allegedly make tens of thousands of dollars a week smuggling migrants over the border. Israeli strikes on the Gaza Strip overnight into Monday have killed at least 17 Palestinians, according to local health officials.
One airstrike hit a home in Gaza's Beit Lahia, killing 10 people, including a Palestinian prisoner, Abdel Fattah Abu Mahdi, who had been released as part of the ceasefire. His wife, 2 of their children and a grandchild were also killed, according to the Indonesian hospital, which received the bodies. Another strike hit a home in Gaza City, killing 7 people, including 2 women, according to Gaza's Health Ministry's emergency service. 2 other people were wounded. The daily bombardment and widespread hunger is taking a heavy toll on Gaza's most vulnerable residents, including pregnant women and children. I'm Charles de Lethesma.
This is AP News. Gethin Coolball has the latest on sports.
AP Sports, I'm Gethin Coolbaugh. The Timberwolves pushed the Lakers to the brink of elimination with a 116-113 Game 4 win to take a 3-1 lead in their first-round Western Conference playoff series. Anthony Edwards scored 43 points.
I've been dreaming of this all my life, whether it was football or basketball, so just being in these situations.
In the East, a missed foul call on Tim Hardaway Jr.'s 3 before the buzzer helped the Knicks survive 94-93 over the Pistons to go up 3-1. The Bucks lost star Damian Lillard to a lower left leg injury, and the Pacers took a 3-1 series lead. The Celtics went up 3-1 over the Magic. Stanley Cup playoffs, Leon Draisaitl's first career playoff OT winner led the Oilers past the Kings 4-3 to even their West first-round series 2-2. The Blues tied their series with the Jets at 2-2. In the East, the Capitals and Hurricanes went up 3-1 in their first-round series.
I'm Marcela Sanchez, AP News.
This is 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, meteorologist Jade Marsleg. For today, we're looking at lots of sunshine, high near 81 degrees, south winds gusting as high as 40 miles per hour. Into tonight, chance for showers and thunderstorms return through the overnight under cloudy skies at the low around 69 degrees. Temperatures rise to around 71 through the overnight with south-southwest winds at 20 to 25 and gusting as high as 45 miles per hour. Tuesday, chance for showers and thunderstorms early in the morning under partly sunny skies with a high near 74 degrees. And that's your latest Chicago weather update. Right now, it's 55 degrees.
Are you tired of talking to yourself? We can get you an audience on the radio. You can produce and host your own radio show on one of our 2 stations. Please call 773-792-1121. That's 773-792-1121 and ask for Mark. Limited space available.
Did you know you can get your prescriptions for less at your local pharmacy? You can with GoodRx. It's the free app that can save you money on your medications. Just search for your prescription, choose the pharmacy and the price that works best for you, and then show your GoodRx coupon to your pharmacist at the drop-off counter. GoodRx works at over 70,000 pharmacies, including Walmart, Rite Aid, and Walgreens, and it works whether you have insurance or not. It's easy to save. Next time you drop off your prescription, check GoodRx. To start saving today, go to GoodRx.com. GoodRx is not insurance.
I'm Smokey Bear, and I made an assistant to help you out, because only you can prevent wildfires.
Hey, Assistant Smokey Bear, call me Papa Bear, because I'm grilling up dinner. Do you get it?
Yes, good job.
So, what should I do with all these coals?
Don't just toss them out. Put them in a metal container because those embers can start a wildfire.
I understand. The stakes are high.
Ha, 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 ha.
Learn more at SmokeyBear.com.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Those headaches and stomach aches your child gets may be migraine. 10% of children and 28% of adolescents have migraine disease. Migraine at School can help. Learn more at migraineatschool.org. As a parent, I know how migraine impacts my daughter's ability to learn. Every child deserves the chance to flourish in school. Visit migraineatschool.org. Sponsored by the Coalition for Headache and Migraine Patients.
Chicago's progressive talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew. Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that focuses on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Hey, progressives, welcome back to the show, 773-763-9278. So we have, again, the opportunity to talk to one of the leading voices right now in this crazy political space and world that we're in, and that would be none other than our good friend, Sarah Jones from PoliticusUSA. Good morning, Sarah, and welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me in this crazy time.
In this crazy time. Yes, it is. I'm so glad you were able to join us this morning, and as part of our regular conversation with you and part of our regular opportunity to talk about the things that are in front of us and to talk about the things that are concerns by many of us. Hopefully more people are catching on and more people are getting back involved. I was saying in the previous segment, one of my big concerns right now is the fact that so many people have been unplugged, and I think that the numbers of people that didn't vote is more, in many ways, more concerning to me in terms of the effort that Democratic folks have to put in going forward. I think has to be to get those people who sat on the sidelines back in the game. And last May, and you may know about this or have heard him talk about this, Bakari Sellers was here in Chicago, and he talked about the fact that there were three choices at the time: Trump, Biden, or the couch. And that I think if you look at the percentages of folks that didn't vote, even though VP Harris became the nominee, that the couch won, people that didn't participate. So I've been saying that a lot of our opportunity is to get people back in the fight that did not participate in this last election on a national level. And, I'm curious what your thoughts are there. I know we're going to talk about a couple other things, but I'm curious what your thoughts are there in terms of getting people back in the fight.
I noticed that in the election, and it was very concerning to me. We saw this rise, and we still have it, of right-wing content creators that were really dominating spaces outside of politics, where people, especially younger people, are more tuned in usually, like pop culture and sports. Like if you look at the broader conversations, they were dominated by these I would say like right-coded content creators. And often we will hear from the Democratic base even, and from media people, that the Democrats need to work on their messaging. And I think Democrats are a little weak on messaging. That has never been their strong point. But the other topic, the other issue, the other side of that is the media hasn't been responsive to their message. And so they have a big roadblock. And I think what has to happen is that everyday people have to start getting involved and get into these other spaces and start trying to have a voice, raise awareness of some issues through those other avenues to reach out to people. Although I will say that the only upside of Donald Trump's behavior in the last 100 days is that he has raised awareness of how important it is to pay attention to who you're electing. Yeah.
There's no question about that. And I read from the Washington Post ABC News poll, and I know that we have to be mindful of polls. I had a couple of people that sent me texts to say be careful with the polls because they, depending on how they, and I've always felt this way too, or certainly in recent years, who created the poll, who's it delivered to, and how's it delivered. But the point is, to your referencing Donald Trump's awfulness has probably gotten some people aware that may have shut it off a little bit, even certainly prior to the election, and his approval rating being lower than any other president in their first 100 days, including his first term. That was not astonishing, but it's certainly, I think, that's one of the opportunities that I hope the DNC and the messaging at large doesn't miss, is we seize on these, as I called it last week, his Achilles heels, how he's wrecking the economy by virtue of these tariffs, how one of his staple items, that being immigration, the southern border, how that's certainly not, taking having the impact with this awful situation with Mr. Garcia, that we have to take those things, those failures, and highlight them and not wait until we get a year out from the midterms, but it needs to be happening right now. And that's the opportunity that I hope that the Democratic messaging, to your point, doesn't miss, and that people do continue to get involved. And maybe that will be a way for people to say, yeah, I can have an impact. I can have a voice. I can be part of the change that needs to happen.
And you know what I think one other aspect to this is, and I just suspect this based on the people that I've interviewed and spoken to, is that during after January 6th, after 1/6, we saw major gaslighting of Americans. And what happened was Donald Trump was not held accountable. And the people that participated in that, although later they were, slowly brought through the court systems. But if we remember, they were allowed to leave the Capitol building. There weren't arrests that day. And I think that when people see such disparity and they are gaslit and they are told basically that there are, certain people, privileged people like Donald Trump will not be held accountable, people begin to disengage because there is no reason to engage. It's very frustrating. It feels like just turn away from that and go do something else. And I think that we saw a lot of Democrats stop paying attention to politics in the aftermath of that. And it wasn't immediate, but it's something that slowly started to erode in the years after that. And I do think the Democratic Party doesn't understand that. But I also think the failure there was our institutions, not the Democratic Party. And I do think that all of these people together, this sort of elite bubble that they can operate in, they may not understand the messages they're sending to everyday people.
Yeah, I mean, if we do point a finger, and it's not point a finger just to do it for the sake of it, I don't think that, and I've said this before, Sarah, and many people have heard me say this, I think that Merrick Garland, from a purely head of that part of the machine, wasn't the right choice. And sometimes I wish that our Democratic leaders would be willing to say, you know what, course correction right now, and that President Biden, and I said this along the way, as many others did, I'm not the only one, I wish he would have been able to say, you know what, we've got a bigger issue than the imagery or the way of doing things in the past, and I've got to replace him with someone else, meaning Merrick Garland. I believe that was one of those moves that President Biden should have made, certainly could have made. But what's the word? I'm losing the decorum. Not so much, but this is how we've done it. Should have been kicked aside, because you're right. Had Americans, both Democratic, Republican, and Independent, seen that the Justice Department was going to go after Donald Trump in the manner in which it should have, for the right reasons, then that would have allowed people who may have tuned out to say, okay, our system is working. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's exactly. I've been actually saying that about Merrick Garland from the beginning, and isn't because I don't like him. I actually thought he would have been perfect on the Supreme Court. He has that kind of temperament. That is not the temperament that we needed after 1/6. We needed somebody that was going to go in there and say, and that's part of it. This has really been the only criticism that I really had about Joe Biden's presidency, is that because after Trump, he wanted to reinforce institutions, and that's a way that you fight off autocracy and you fight off encroaching fascism. So I understood why he wanted to do that. And to him, that was that we would have Merrick Garland as AG and everything would happen really slowly so it wasn't politicized. But I live in this Trump district, and I spoke to Trump voters after 1/6, and they were really horrified by it. Now, what happened is after those people weren't arrested and after the gaslighting began and the alternative reality began, so did their minds change. And they began to think that nothing bad happened that day and it was all a lie. And that actually there were false flag actors there. There were, it was Democrats there, not Republicans, not Trump supporters. And so when there is that failure, that's what happens, right? They get to set this narrative. And I do want to bring up two things that just happened this week about the media, because that's also where this stuff can come from. If they don't set this strong narrative that this, this is the truth, this is reality. We have to have shared reality if we are going to have elections, if we're going to have a political, if we're going to have a democracy, we actually have to have shared reality. So just this week, two Scotland Yard detectives who were investigating the Murdoch tabloids said that the new evidence that was brought forth means they would have considered the man who is now chief executive and publisher of the Washington Post, Will Lewis, to be a criminal suspect in covering up wrongdoing. Now, they knew about that. Those accusations have been around before they gave him that job. And I just wonder, why would you put that person in charge of one of the nation's leading papers before an election when one of the people running is an autocrat?
Yeah.
That's troubling. And then also just to kind of buttress this point, Bill Owens resigned from 60 Minutes on Tuesday.
Yep.
Because of Paramount Plus having kind of oversight into their stories and supervising the content in new ways. And he felt that he lost the independence that he needed for honest journalism. And I think if people see like all that erosion coming from places, these pillars of our democracy that we used to be able to count on, and that's all, they make those choices. They can say Donald Trump threatened us or whatever. But you know what? No, you made a choice because of your merger to appease this man. And there should be shame with those choices.
Scott Pelley did it at the end of 60 Minutes last night, spoke to that in terms of that resignation and how it is, there are people who are standing up. However, there's not enough that are standing up to the autocracy from the White House, both in journalism and in business. And I said last week, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this 2 points, Sarah. One, that universities, this sort of mutual collective that the Big Ten, as an example, are coming together to defend each other from these potential suits, these potential attacks. We saw that Harvard is suing the Trump administration. And I think it's Garber. Is it Andy Garber that's now kind of gathered himself and says, no, we're not going to bend the knee. But the Big Ten and other conferences are starting to look at this and saying that the mutual energy that they have, the mutual strength, the dollars that they have, the influence means something. And by coming together rather than being out there on an island by themselves, they have a better chance at fending off. I feel the same way about many, many businesses. Big, medium, and small businesses. Why is it that small businesses are the ones that are, in some states now, through their AGs, suing the Trump administration? More big businesses should be as well. I believe that collective energy, that collective mindset is powerful if wielded properly. But to sit back and to your point, not go forward, when these organizations, and unfortunately, like I said, the Big Ten is taking a step in that direction. But what are your thoughts about that collective energy?
That is where there is power. And I share your disappointment, and I'm really actually kind of disgusted with a lot of big business. And personally, I have decided to not spend my money there I'm going out of my way to just, I know it's not going to change anything, but it's something that I feel I have to live up to my values, and I simply cannot give these people my money while they are bending the knee, and actually not even just bending the knee, but they're benefiting from a system that is meant to hurt everybody else. And I think the caller that was on with you right before I came on, you know, her story speaks to that. Like, when I see the people that are being hurt by this administration, and then I look at these corporate entities who have so many privileges, they take advantage of our infrastructure that is paid for by the taxpayers. They don't pay their fair share of taxes. And it's never enough, you know, it's never enough for them. And what's interesting, and you brought up the universities, even far right Candace Owens, big Trump supporter, has come out and said that what he's doing to universities is wrong, and that when you start silencing free speech, it can happen to anybody. And I see we have this broad coalition that's actually, you know, Joe Rogan speaking out against kidnapping people the way that ICE is. And so there's this broad consensus of people speaking out. But again, it's not happening in these institutions. You know, it's interesting you talk about this coalition. Isn't it your governor, Governor Pritzker, who was talking about finding a way to boycott El Salvador if they did not return, or if they keep anyone that Trump sends there? And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if he started a coalition? What if California and New York started, you know, got involved in that? Then you start to see a lot of power. But I mean, we also saw this with the law firms. Like he targeted at least 5 law firms, and some of them sued him in return, but others caved immediately and began doing the stuff that he was asking them to do. And it's actually so appalling. And those are the people, I just feel like, wow, you know, almost feels like that they are betraying their obligations as citizens, and their, you know, the responsibility that comes with privilege and power. Which is some, you know.
No, and Sarah, the reason that has to be part of the conversation right now is because, at least in my observation, we all have these sort of connected parts of our lives. We're connected on the economy because we are a consumer-driven economy. I've said that hundreds of times. We make, we spend, hopefully we save, and we invest. So that's a connection that we all should be taking advantage of in terms of pushing the businesses to do more. Because the reality is, if we don't, then those businesses just kind of, like you said, just kind of keep rolling on like nothing's changed. And Stephanie Rule had a segment a couple of weeks ago that we played in part where she said the silence is deafening from big businesses who are going to be impacted, and they are and will continue to be impacted by the misuse of tariffs. And that to me is why I think consumers have to pay attention to this space. Education. We're dotted line, or we're certainly 1 degree of separation from someone that we know that's wanted to get a higher education. So for the universities, I think that's an opportunity for them to reach out to the millions and say, we aren't going to sit back and let this Trump truck just run over us. And so I circle back to where you started on your point on this. I'm so proud of our governor, J.B. Pritzker, here in Illinois, and the leadership that he's taken right out of the gate. It didn't take him 5 weeks to get his footing to say what he wasn't going to stand for here in the state of Illinois. He said it very, very clearly, full-throatedly early on after the election that you got to come through me. You got to come through my people. We aren't going to stand for what Donald Trump is going to try to bring to the state, but certainly to the country. And he's been very, very strong in that and very steady in that space. As I say, not perfect, but to your point, Sarah, would it be great if those blue state governors and those blue state AGs, not one-offs, but collectively said, we all are going to be impacted by what this administration is trying to do. And we can't count on the mainstream media to do the right thing, because they're going to continue to gaslight us for ratings and all the rest. And Sarah, you wrote to that this past week. But each of these different entities come together and say, no, we're not going to accept this. We're going to put some brakes on you, Donald Trump, and your administration. I think I don't. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe they think it's too hard to do. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Actually, but what you're saying is sparking so much inside of me that I'm like, yes. I think, you know what? If it's too much for them, if they think that's too much, then they're in the wrong job, because this is the job. And that whole kind of cowardice that we are seeing from so many people, where they, I need to go down to Mar-a-Lago and kiss the ring. We've got to find a way to get along. That is just, first of all, no matter how you feel about Donald Trump, that does not work. And so that is a dumb thing to do. You cannot appease an autocrat. It is never going to work. So it is a stupid strategy. All it does is kick the can down the road a little bit. But as soon, like all of these blue state governors, for example, I'm sure they're all thinking about COVID when he was, withholding resources from them because of the way their state voted. Well, that's going to happen again. That's who he is. That's what he's going to do. So there is no going down to Mar-a-Lago and speaking to him isn't going to fix that.
No.
And I don't know if you heard Pritzker, but he said that he called for mass protests and disruption, and he said he's never done that before. And he said Republicans cannot know a moment of peace, and one day their portraits will be in museums reserved for tyrants and traitors.
Yeah, Governor Pritzker is, I'll go out on a limb and say it. I hope he. Well, I'm very careful in how I position this. I think that he will be a great candidate if he decides to run for president. I think he's filling his strength coffers right now by taking the lead on a lot of these issues, and I'm hoping that that continues, because if nothing else, he's putting light on things that need to be lit up. And I want to come back to something that you said a moment ago, Sarah, in terms of going down and kissing the ring, going down to Mar-a-Lago and kissing the ring. Bullies like it when people come to them with weakness. You have to punch a bully squarely in the face. You have to knock that bully, him or her, over and let them crash into the pool. That's what we have to do. They like it when people yield to them. And we right now don't have the luxury of doing that anymore. If we don't inspire enough people to punch that bully that's right in their own lives in the face, politically, not literally, they gain space, they gain territory. So we say this, but we mean it for us too, as everyday folks. And I mean, I have to compliment you because you do such a great job with your articles and your posts. But, it's calling out the BS every time the BS comes in front of you. And that's what I think everyday folks have the opportunity, let alone the responsibility, to do.
I agree completely. That is something that, because people are always asking, what can I do? And the biggest thing I think people can do is to educate other people about the facts about due process and how it's important to everybody. Things like that about the economy. But to just keep that in this general space where it isn't politicized. And I actually hate that everyone is saying that, but it is the correct thing to do right now. Although I always want to tell people everything is political. Everything is political. Like all of the things, because these same people saying that are people that benefited from civil rights action, from all kinds of previous political action, and from policies and laws that are in place right now because of politics, because of people who stood up in years prior to us. So I just want to say, and I know we're coming to the end of this, but I do see the silencing of the judges as this sort of escalation into authoritarianism, and this creating this environment where people will self-center, so that Donald Trump has this can give the impression that he has a mandate, which of course the new polling numbers show he does not. And also when people speak up to him, like Pritzker and others, that shows he doesn't have a mandate. And when you punch a bully in the face, you rip off the mask. Like it's the Mask of Oz and you see the little man behind that, and that has to happen every single day. And that's something that we can all do when we're talking to friends, our neighbors, people online. We can do some part of that.
And that you were reading my mind, Sarah, because, I mean, obviously there's so much more to talk about, and we will. But that's what everybody can do. I hope you guys anywhere in the country heard what Sarah just said. We do have to be willing to punch the bully in the face real time on a day-to-day basis when it comes your way, because the other side of that is being silenced from action, being silenced from your thoughts, frankly. And we can't allow that to be who we are and where we are right now. Sarah, last thoughts, and how can folks, of course, find you and follow you and the great work that you put out every day?
Thank you so much. I am on Substack, and I have a newsletter called The Daily with Sarah Jones, and also separately PoliticusUSA on Substack now. My thoughts in closing are that we are seeing all of this really kind of, if you look at it, almost desperate attempt by Trump with the bad economy and the sort of erosion even of his poll numbers on immigration, which was the only issue he was strong on. We're seeing him silence judges and disobeying court orders in response to all of that. And I think what we're seeing with these immigration raids and attacks on people's rights is in part desperation, and it's trying to create a narrative of fear. So what I want to say to everybody is, yes, this is a scary time. We are all afraid, but take a deep breath. They want you to be afraid, and know that this is our country and we have these constitutional rights, and we are all going to stand up together, and we will fight for these rights peacefully.
Absolutely. Sarah Jones, y'all, good to be with you and have you on the show this morning. Sarah, looking forward to talking to you again in a week or so. Meanwhile, keep up the great work, and we'll talk soon, okay?
Thank you so much.
All right. Talk to you soon. Have a great day. Bye now.
You too. Bye.
Bye. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and great to have Sarah with us. When we come back, we'll be talking with a pretty well-informed person on a very tough subject. The number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views. We'll be right back.
This is Tony Moray. I'm an estate planning lawyer who drafts living trusts and wills. Since the election, I've been hearing from my clients, many of them fellow WCPT listeners, and we all wonder, how did this happen and what can we do? The how is, of course, very complicated. My thoughts as regard to what we can do is simple but important. We need to take extra care of those we love. Having an estate plan using either a living trust or will can provide comfort in uncertain times like these. When the progressive values we hold dear are under attack, I feel we must make sure that our personal lives are secure and then work out from there. I've been drafting estate plans for my clients for over 30 years, and I will use all of that experience to help you. Please call me at 847-996-0496. My website is moreylawoffice.com. That's Morey spelled M-O-R-E-E. Again, the phone is 847-996-0496. There is no cost or obligation for our initial discussion. I look forward to speaking with you.
It's nice to know someone is on your side. Mark Drugs always has your back. No two dogs are the same. A dosage form or strength of medication that works for one dog may not work for another. A compounding pharmacy like Mark Drugs is here to help you with your pet's medication challenges. We'll be happy to help you when your pet is sick. After all, it can affect the whole family. That's why we give our four-legged patients customized medications to make it easier for them to take. For pet medication problems, first see your veterinarian, then talk to your hometown independent compounding pharmacy, Mark Drugs. If you'd like to know more about the ways we can personalize medication for each individual patient, we'd be happy to help. We are a compounding pharmacy, which means we can prepare the medication prescribed in a strength and dosage form that meets the patient's needs. Ask us how our pharmacy can help. You have a choice when it comes to your health care, and a great choice is Mark Drugs and Roselle and Deerfield, where you get better health and care for you and your pets. Check out the Pet of the Month at markdrugs.com.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, meteorologist Jade Marsleck. For today, we're looking at lots of sunshine, high near 81 degrees, south winds gusting as high as 40 miles per hour. Into tonight, chance for showers and thunderstorms return through the overnight under cloudy skies with a low around 69 degrees. Temperatures rise to around 71 through the overnight with south-southwest winds at 20 to 25 and gusting as high as 45 miles per hour. Tuesday, chance for showers and thunderstorms early in the morning under partly sunny skies with a high near 74 degrees. And that's your latest Chicago weather update. Right now, it's 57 degrees.
Because facts matter. You're listening to WCPT 820.
You're listening to Choose View with Richard Chu on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, progressives, welcome back to Choose View, 773-763-9278. Dr. Erie Crawford is, I would say, one of those leading voices. It's a distinguished author. Most recent book is The Other Side of Midnight, A Journey to Healing Spouses and Loved Ones Affected by Suicide. She's a survivor as well as a psychologist that has helped so many people with a variety of different struggles. But she herself specifically is the spouse of a retired Chicago police officer who died by suicide in 2019. And her book highlights the trauma, but also working through the other side, as the book is entitled, The Other Side of Midnight. Welcome to the show, Dr. Crawford. Welcome to Choose Views this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for having me this morning. This is a great opportunity to be able to share some important information on a much-needed topic.
Absolutely it is. And I know that over the years, these past 5 to 6 years, you've been showered with a variety of different words to keep you propped up and to keep you strong in the face of what you had to experience. But the thing that I would say to you is courageous and giving, because to be able to take this tragedy and share that, and then the strength that people need to be able to persevere when something like this happens, I believe is important, and your willingness to give back at a time like this. So thank you for that, and thank you for being with us. Take a moment, if you can, to share a little bit about your background as a doctor, as a trauma expert.
Well, I am a licensed social worker. I started off in the field of social work. I've been doing it for the past 25 years, working closely with families and individuals who may have experienced traumatic experiences. Is usually the underserved populations that I worked so closely with throughout my career. I decided to go to school to become a business psychologist in order to help organizations and companies to be able to work well with those who work under them, the voices that's never heard. And so my fight for my whole career has always been to increase the voices of those that doesn't really have a voice in the space.
And there are millions of people all over our country that are in that space, as you've said. They have varieties of different types of trauma going on, and so many different forms of sadness in their life that they don't talk about. And in the workplace, and I can see where your business psychologist and psychology work has been important and relevant. In the workplace, folks don't necessarily talk about we may talk about it on a very surface level, but getting into the depths of why they may be struggling with something that even their coworkers don't know about. And they probably wouldn't know about it because it may be so incredibly personal to them. You've really helped people in that area.
Yes, I really try to, as I stated, add the voice for people who don't feel comfortable or confident enough to do it for themselves. Social work and psychology has been a lifelong passion of mine, to be able to help individuals who don't feel as if they feel supported or heard or just doesn't know how to connect themselves to the right resources that they may need in order to help them to move forward in certain areas. And so I feel it's important to be able to make that happen for people who don't have the wherewithal or feel confident enough or even feel like they have the power to do it for themselves, because a lot of times we don't do or say things because we don't feel empowered to do so.
So when you say empowered to do so, and empowered to have those conversations, what is your experience of what that looks like, what that may mean to people?
So for me, empowered means writing the book, right? Mm-hmm. Adding that voice in that space where our voice is not really heard. You hear people constantly speaking of knowing someone who may have lost their life to suicide, but it's always one of those things where the conversation is had in secret, right? It's never had in an open space because it's so taboo to talk about that. We just got very comfortable with having that conversation within our community and our societies as of recently. But for so many years, you just didn't speak of that. And so for me, it's like, well, no more. We need to speak of it. We need to make this concern in our communities and our society known. We need to add a voice to this. There's no more space to be silent.
Wow, that's another. Not to have you writing yet another great book, but that's another great title. There's no space to be silent. We obviously have a political talk show here, but we talk about social issues, and one of them is our care for one another, our care for our society at large, and the greater concern around health care and health issues. Do you think, and I know this is just in a little way, not putting you on the spot, but just to get your opinion and your experience, do you think that we as a society don't put enough money, effort, resources into this part of health care, this part of care and personal care, because of the stigma about someone having a mental disorder? Why do you think? And I'm kind of leaning in this direction of my own question. But what are your thoughts there in terms of what we don't spend, what we don't invest in this part of medical or health care?
I agree. There's not enough money invested in the space. Oftentimes, I work as a director of a health program at the University of Chicago, and we often find challenges with finding resources for our patient population who may need mental health services because it's not readily available, right? Because it's one of those things where mental health was looked at one of those things that you managed at home with your family versus you seeking outside help because no one wanted to be stigmatized. And so I just think it has spilled over into our healthcare system where things are not viewed as serious of a health risk as someone who may have a terminal illness of cancer or things to that nature where the resources will be poured into that area. But for mental health, for so long, people have tried to manage it on their own that the severity of the importance to have the money into that service so that people can get the help that they need in the right setting, right? Not at home, not trying to air out your problems on social media when you're having this mental health crisis and not feeling supported in that. And so for so long, with the shame that have existed around it, I don't think they have really understood the importance of investing in that form of health care. Now, are they getting better at it? Yes, they're getting better because now they're seeing more of a rise of so many mental health concerns and issues that people are showing up with at the hospital doors and the clinics, and they know that no longer you can't ignore this. This is not something that you can ignore and just send someone away. But these are real health issues. It may not be a physical issue of your body, but mental issues is just as detrimental as a physical issue with someone who is and living with a mental health issue.
So many people.
Or disorder.
Yeah. So many people, Dr. Crawford, we all have heard this so many times, that mental stress can cause so many other ailments that are systemic or systemic medical issues that come out of stress. And that mental stress is tied to so many different things that may not get discussed, that then leads to some other form of a medical issue. And it's sort of like if we could put more light on the fact that sometimes our physical stresses come from some of the mental things that we deal with, and then vice versa. If we do have a physical issue going on, that it may cause some mental stress. They do work together, but oftentimes the mental thing is put over in the corner, and it's said that, we don't want to talk about that. We want to deal with those parts of our society and frankly, parts of our humanity. Your book, The Other Side of Midnight, was one that was born out of a tragedy that you personally experienced. And your gift back to so many people was to give messaging and support to help people who may be dealing with or maybe the survivor of a suicide in their own family. And the courage it took you to write this book. What have been some of your responses from people and feedback that you've received from having written The Other Side of Midnight?
I have gotten great feedback and positive feedback, and people appreciating the courage that it took to pen such a book, to not just share a story, but to also to be able to help others in their healing journey. It's easy to write a story, right? But for me, what does that story does at the end to kind of help other people in their healing? So the feedback that I have received from so many people of how helpful that it have been and encouraging, even for individuals who may not have directly had that experience, they have said, I can see this helping in other areas of loss just by the way, it is written. But for those who may have had that experience of losing a loved one to suicide, they feel that it's a very hopeful book, and that it can really help with the healing process if you just take the time to read and spend the time within those chapters to kind of help you in your healing journey and process.
Faith, resilience, and recovery from a profound loss is something that you really lean into in the book, in terms of how your faith has carried you forward and allowed you to be open and resilient in this journey that you're going to be on candidly for the rest of your life, and to bring, and you're a big proponent of bringing people with you and surrounding yourself with folks that allow you to sustain yourself during this loss. And I know that you've been a really big believer and practitioner of that.
Yes, I believe community is key. Be it your community of other, your others who share your same faith, your family. It's just something that is really needed in your journey of healing. You can't do it alone. You should not do it in a silo. You need people around you who can kind of help and encourage you during this dark moment, right? As you're trying to get on the other side of midnight. I credit my faith with giving me the courage to even be bold enough to be able to write this book, to put this experience on paper. It wasn't an easy feat to do, right? It's one of those things like I have to share myself. I have to be able to put a story out there that most people will find to be taboo or shame of it because of their loved one have lost their life to suicide. And we never heard of people talking about that. That was one of those things that happened and then it disappeared.
Right.
I didn't want that to happen. I wanted to be able to put that out there, help people to understand this is not going anywhere. And so if it's not going anywhere, what are we going to do to address this to make sure that we can lessen the rate of individuals who are losing their lives to suicide? And so it was my faith that gave me the courage to keep going, and it was my community that kind of encouraged me as well to be able to sit in the moment with the people who rally themselves around me to support me during that time, to give me the encouragement that I need. Now, let's keep in mind, this happened right before the pandemic, and so it became a very challenging time for me to have to sit in those moments alone. So without my community and without my faith, I don't think I would have been able to make it on the other side of midnight, because once we were told to shelter in place, it was no more contact, which is something that people don't really understand. That's a really scary place to be with when you can't have interaction with other individuals outside of a phone call.
Yeah, and that's the part where I go back to your faith and resilience and community have been such an important part of this. And we applaud you for that, which you've done, but also sharing the story. And one of the things that you said a moment ago, you said this a couple of times, that the importance of not being stuck in your silo and the importance of community and having that around you. We are, no doubt, and you know this, we're in a very, very crazy and tough time in our greater community in this country right now, and throughout the world, if we were to broaden it to that part of the conversation. But, socially, politically, economically, right now, community is incredibly important in the things that we're facing, because to your point, we don't know what people are stressed with in their world, and if they've gone silent, what they've magnified by going silent and not having that community. So I would ask you to answer this question, of which I think I know the answer to, about how important it is to check on people and to reach out to people and to see how folks are doing in general, but now specifically where we are as a country and what we're all fighting through. Yes,
it's a very scary time that we're living in, and so we just can't assume that everyone is handling it well, right? And so you need to check in on your loved ones and your friends, even the ones who, often you feel like, oh, they're okay because they, you know how you just have those people in your life that's okay with being alone.
Right.
But sometimes it's not okay with being alone, and you still need to check in on that person, because you just don't know how the things that are going on in our current climate is affecting your loved ones. We can't assume that everyone is doing all right with what's going on in the world. And so it's very important, because mental health concerns and mental health issues is major right now. And it's not taking a lot for people to break, and we're seeing this increase in depression and anxiety and all these things where, when you would just say, oh, I'm a little depressed or I'm anxious about something. No, these are real disorders that people are struggling with, that they could be clinically dealing with, that we need to make sure we're checking in on our loved ones, because you just don't know how they're being affected by what is happening in our world, as you have stated. Like, it's no hands off right now. It's all hands on deck in this time to make sure that our people are doing good and that they're okay.
Dr. Crawford, it can't be stated any better, so I'm not going to say anything to follow up on that, other than to say thank you so much for your courage and your energy that you bring to this topic. The book is The Other Side of Midnight. How can folks find you? How can people purchase the book to be able to take advantage of your courage and the writing that you put out here for us?
The book can be found on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Apple Books. You can reach out to me at Erie S. Crawford, myphd.org. And you can also purchase the book through my website as well if you don't want to go to any of those platforms.
Fantastic. Dr. Crawford, thank you so much for being with us. Thanks for your courage and thanks for your insight about how we as a community have to all come together and work together to move us forward. So thanks for being with us this morning. We look forward to having you back in the future. Does that sound good?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me this morning.
Absolutely. Have a great day, Dr. Crawford. Thanks for being with us. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So, yeah, guys, what can I tell you? Courage is critical. Community is critical. And she says it in the space of what she's dealt with, but also just in general is in terms of where we are in our society right now. And when Sarah was on, Sarah talked about the number of people that are sad and disappointed, depressed, as Dr. Crawford said. We know that those folks exist, family, friends, business associates, and the like. So out of a tragedy of losing her husband to suicide, who was a retired Chicago police officer, by the way, Dr. Crawford has created a fantastic book that you can get because what's covered in the book isn't just about the fact that it was a police officer that died to suicide, but that there are so many people in our community that need to be they need to be looked in on. We need to be willing to go one or two questions deeper other than just saying, how are you? What's going on? Is to delve into that a little bit more. And I think politically right now, the people who are, not knowing what to do. If I try to do anything with this show, and I've said this before, it's to leave you with something good. We are going to have tough conversations. We're going to have tough subject matters. But my goal, and I hope I'm, constantly reaching toward it, is to make sure that we are leaving you with something good every day. And with that being said, as always, as we leave our show, we tell you to take a deep breath and make your life count. We'll see you tomorrow.
Are you tired of talking to yourself? We can get you an audience on the radio. You can produce and host your own radio show on one of our 2 stations. Please call 773-792-1121. That's 773-792-1121 and ask for Mark. Limited space available.
As a fan, you know all the important sports cliches. And when you save money by bundling your home and auto with Progressive, you can get out there and give it 110%, even though that's mathematically impossible. And remember, failure is not an option. Well, it's always an option, just not a good one. But you're not worried because you've got ice in your veins. You're on fire. How can both of those things be true at the same time? Well, that's between you and your doctor. So get out there and leave it all on the field. Leave what? Who cares? Just leave it and save with a bundle from Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers. Not available in all states or situations.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer. And again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs.